And we're live. Hi, I'm Hannah Judson, and welcome to the show. Today I'm talking to conductor, pianist, and educator Rei Hotoda. She is currently music director of the Fresno Philharmonic and has so many accomplishments and accolades under her belt. Rather than me listing them here, let's just dive in. I've got a lot of questions and we've got so many things to talk about. Welcome to the show, Rei.
Thank you, Hannah. It's great to be here. I'm sending you greetings from Honolulu, Hawaii at the moment, where I'm guest conducting the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra in their first performance for a live in-person audience this weekend. And so it's been really exciting, but lots of trepidation. And, my gosh, it took me I don't know how many COVID tests to get here on the island. And they're really, really strict about everything here, with the pandemic. But it's just glorious to be out and working again. And I'm just thrilled to work with this orchestra. This is my second time here.
Wow.
Guest conducting them. And they're such a joy to work with. And it's, the setting is just heavenly. I have this gorgeous view on my balcony of the ocean. And every morning I wake up to that. And it's just one of the perks of being a guest conductor.
Wow. That sounds great. That sounds really lovely. So when you first came back to the sort of podium, to the role, and the orchestra first came in, how did that go? What was the vibe like when everybody first got together to work?
Well, I had lots of anxiousness, I think. They hadn't played together in 12 months as an ensemble. They've done little things online and streaming and whatnot, but not, a full concert with 60 players on stage. And with social distancing, we have to have one person per stand as well. So everyone's spread out, which is not ideal for an ensemble to play together. And but I think everyone really was so excited to play and so grateful for the opportunity to play. And myself included, because last year when March hit, I had all these debuts with other orchestras across the country, and all of them were canceled, and just one by one. And then my Fresno Philharmonic, we were trying to figure out how to get our players, on stage again, and it really took about 9 months to get everyone safely back on stage for us in California.
Wow.
But even then was such a struggle to get, the city ordinances and all of the things, the protocols that needed to take place. And so, I don't know, this past year was revolutionary for us as musicians. We had to do all kinds of different things to adapt, but also a way for organizations to really revamp the model. I think it was really eye-opening for me as a music director, because this is my orchestra. I felt so responsible for my patrons, for my orchestra members, and for the organization to sustain during this time. A lot of organizations folded or they went dark for a year and now are reemerging. And it's just, not to have contact with my audience and my players during this time last year was what I just couldn't do that. I didn't want that to happen. And so like we were doing lots of interviews online and doing smaller chamber orchestra concerts that are streaming and they're available. You can watch them at the FresnoPhil.org has them all on their website, but we also have a YouTube page, Fresno Phil YouTube page that has all of our concerts, all of our masterworks for free.
Wow.
And that was really important for us to give back to our community, say thank you for supporting us this year. Here are some amazing concerts,
So when you became aware that everything really was, to use sort of the word of the years, like pivot, everybody had to pivot. When you became aware that that we were in for the long haul, was it natural to you to know what to do next, or did you have to think about it or consult people, or how did you know?
It was not natural, believe me. And yes, I reached out to so many different people and watched what all the big orchestras were doing. My CEO and was the Fresno Philharmonic was having weekly Zoom meetings with all the California orchestra leaders and executive directors weekly. I was talking to him every day to figure out, how do we do this? And every organization, every community has to do it their own way, I think. It wasn't like there was one way to do it and let's all do that. One of the things I really felt passionate about was doing a digital concert that really made sense, not just doing Eine Kleine or something familiar, for our orchestra. It's something easy. I wanted to challenge my orchestra, but also challenge the listeners by featuring composers that were marginalized before, or women composers, and just really have a mixture of works that were very, very relevant and challenging, but also musically extremely gratifying. And so this was an opportunity for me to look at all this repertoire that I would have never programmed or never been able to program in a regular season, and adapt them to these digital concerts. So we featured a 25-year-old Black composer, Kevin Day, a Jasmine Barnes, a high school teacher in Dallas, she's also African American, and she's now been commissioned by the National Opera in DC to write an opera for them. I mean, all these up and coming composers that have really become recognized, for their talent. Yeah. It's not just because of the skin color, but because they're talented. And I really felt that was something that we have overlooked as an organization, but also in the classical music world. It's just, I don't know. It's just something that is something that I feel passionate about for my organization, for everywhere I go to, as I guest conduct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how much does your audience want to be challenged?
I think they do. I think music is such a great platform for social injustice, for all the things that we face in the world socially. This is a way to really express the things that we need to express that we can't sometimes use words for. And so through music, especially an orchestra, this is a community in itself. We have the Fresno Philharmonic, we have 72 orchestra members. And what a community that is, from diverse backgrounds, different parts of the country, even different parts of California. This is what I call my freeway orchestra, because they play in. My principal horn probably plays principal horn for 8 other orchestras all around, all across the state. And so, this is a chance for us to be a community, to talk to our community through music, and doing that, we program. And that's the way right now, as an artistic, way to navigate all of this is through the pieces that I pick for these programs.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So that must be a really it's a privilege, but also must just be one of the most interesting or a very interesting part of your job to be able to choose the music.
Yes. And
I remember when I first met you, I remember you were working with new music, and you were sort of, and I thought of you as sort of new music, but I knew you also did classical music. Right. Do you get to do new music now, or is it?
Right. So a lot of these composers have just written these pieces. And so this is all new music.
That is, okay.
Yeah. And I still do experimental music as well. Yeah. Oh gosh, it was just so sad. This year and last year, the Tokyo Olympics, I was supposed to do this new piece by Gene Coleman, another Chicagoan composer. He's now in Philadelphia, but he wrote this piece called Kata, and it was to be performed at the Olympics. And we were supposed to work with these Japanese instrumentalists and electronic musician as well. I was going to conduct it. And it's based on the movements of a karate kata, which is like this, what do you call that? This form of doing these movements, so it was supposed to be performed at the Olympics last year. I was supposed to be in Tokyo for a week with rehearsals and working with these amazing Japanese musicians. We're talking traditional instruments like the sho and the koto and the shamisen and so that was supposed to be this incredible mix of Western and Eastern music.
Wow. So interesting.
But it's been canceled. So,
will it come back?
We'll see.
Yeah. So what you just described instruments that I don't know anything about. I wouldn't be able to identify them.
Yeah.
And so you must be constantly learning more things about instruments if as a conductor, like you're responsible for.
Right. Well, it's most conductors probably, I don't know. I can't speak for most conductors because I'm pretty, I feel like I'm still a musician, I'm not just a conductor. So I'm still playing. One of the things I love to do is play and conduct at the same time. And, but I am a learner, I'm still learning about things. And even though I've conducted a Beethoven symphony, 50 times, I'm still trying to learn from that same piece, something different, And so when we talk about different instruments, it's kind of digging into my past. I was born in Japan and came here when I was 5 years old. And so I'm, I feel very American, but as I'm, getting older and just thinking about my culture and how important that is to me, I love exploring my culture, my heritage, and that's Japanese. And so my mother played koto. She has it's a long zither instrument. Okay. It's about 10 feet long across, and and she grew up learning that instrument, and she has one in her home in Chicago, and I just feel really connected to it. There's just some sounds that everyone connects to, and these Japanese instruments I feel is very much in my gene pool or something, And so I've always been interested in that, and just meeting these musicians and working with these traditional Japanese musicians. It's called gagaku, and it's like the royal court musicians from 500 years ago.
Wow.
and they're still playing and they're still doing the same traditions. It's like, here I am in Hawaii. What do? I turn on the TV and I watch sumo wrestling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because I would never watch that, at home in the Midwest in Illinois. Right. And it's broadcast here 24/7.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So I find that fascinating, the traditions and so many things about it. It's really interesting. Yeah.
So one of the things you just said is that you are learning, that you are constantly learning new things. Yeah. And you were talking about learning more about your own culture. And then you had mentioned the Beethoven piece, and you've conducted it 50 times, and you're continually learning from that piece. And I was wondering, when you are approaching a work that is known and to conduct, are you referencing the notes of the composer, or are you referencing what other conductors have done in the past, or are you interpreting the work?
It's a combination.
How does it work?
Yeah, it's a combination of all three, definitely. As a student, I would listen to a lot of different recordings and trying to, learn it that way too. But conducting is so strange because, I've been a pianist all my life. I started playing the piano at the age of 3. Wow. And music has always been a part of my family. And my brother's a producer in Japan. He does pop music. So he's like the superstar of the family.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But my father was an artist, and he played symphonic music all the time at home. My mother was a teacher, an educator, and a singer. And so even today, I'm playing on the piano. I make her sing these Schubert lieders, things like that. but I feel that okay, now I already lost my train of thought.
About what you're pulling from when you're putting your thoughts together to conduct.
Yeah. I think being a pianist and having played Beethoven piano sonatas gives me such a different perspective as a conductor conducting his symphonies. And I'm learning all of this as I'm going, because conducting is not like practicing 8 hours in front of an orchestra. You can't do that. You can't hire 30, 60 players to practice every day.
Right.
So it's all in your head. It's all internalized. And then, when you get on the podium, it's trial by fire. So as a young conductor, as a student, when I was a student at Peabody, we had an orchestra to practice on, but that was maybe 20 minutes a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then you get your first job, which I did with the Winnipeg Symphony in Canada. And that was 2006. I had never conducted a professional orchestra before. And here I am doing 30 concerts my first season as their assistant conductor. And it was all like learning on the podium.
Yeah.
And so conducting is one of those things where you do get better as you get older, because you don't have the instrument in front of you. So I can't, like, I'm practicing piano. I can practice on my piano at home, for 8 hours, and I know how to do it, and get ready for my performance. But with an orchestra, you just have to figure it out, and being a conductor is also being a therapist, a psychologist.
Yeah.
I would sometimes akin it to being a heart surgeon, because you have to fix things before they start bleeding out.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
You have to be an incredible musician. You have to have a great ear. You have to really know the instruments and what they can do.
Yeah.
And that's all through experience.
Yeah.
So, I'm lucky. I've been doing this for, about 15 years now. So, hopefully I'm getting better.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you were already great when you started, because I think that you are good at what you do. But I have a question. When you are letting the orchestra know what's coming, like, we're going to be these are our works for the season, or this is what we're working on now. Do you tell them what you're looking for, or do you have them work on it and then they come to you and then you start working with them?
Yes. So they have the music at least 3 months before each concert. And usually, when I'm guest conducting, they'll have full season, and the orchestra members will know what the programs are for every month of the season. And they practice on their own. And literally, we put it together in 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I just come in, we have maybe 4 or 5 rehearsals maximum, sometimes 3, sometimes 2.
Wow. Wow.
And we're just talking 2.5 hours. We have to cover, 5 pieces plus a concerto with a soloist, It's really intense. So those 3 days of rehearsals, or 2 days, jam-packed, and we just all come together and just make it happen. And there's union issues too. So all the players have to stop at a certain time. They have to have breaks. And so it's a different world. It's definitely a different world. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting. It's really interesting how you were talking about that you are a psychologist and that you're dealing with all sorts of different things at the same time. Because I think that, from somebody who's completely inexperienced, from your side of things, what you experience in the audience when you go to an orchestra is you first hear everybody tuning their instruments and people trailing in, coming in, and there's that vibe, which is something I always really enjoy, that sound, and it starts sort of a vibration, and then it launches into something unbelievable. Like, I mean, it is hard to imagine, from somebody who doesn't play classical music, it is hard to imagine that can actually happen. It's so wonderful. I mean, and it really is, it's like a big event. all
Right.
those things coming together and
Well, and
coming to,
that's why, yes, and that's why I'm talking about community, because if it weren't for every single player in the orchestra really giving their 100%,
yeah,
it's a totally different experience. And, with all these professional orchestras that I have the privilege of conducting, they just play. And it's like magic. It really
yeah,
is. It's
yeah,
like, it's an ultimate high for me. And some people think a lot of players actually, they're like, I could never step on the podium. All these
yeah,
musicians that have played under famous conductors, you know, they try. I've seen them try to get up on the podium, and it's just a different feeling, because
yeah,
you're completely responsible for all these players to perform at their peak, and you have to convey that energy, the drive, the music with just a stick. I'm holding a pencil right now, but
yeah, yeah,
you know, and everyone's like, "How do you do this with the baton?" And it's really not the stick; it's the person that's on the podium.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
just like any concert you experience, any music you experience, it's the person that's being projected from the instrument, right?
right.
Um,
The what is that exactly? How would you describe that? Like in terms of an energy
yeah,
thing? It's that.
gosh, it's I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's sometimes I think of like a synergy that's happening, you know.
yeah,
So the orchestra and yourself. I mean, there's definitely has to be a chemistry between the orchestra and the person on the podium, for
yeah,
sure. And that is it's like this unsaid thing, that happens.
yeah,
I think, there's an incredible amount of trust that happens, like when you're in a band, or, you feel comfortable with the people that
yeah,
will be there for you,
yeah,
or that you can push and they'll be right there with you, as you're
yeah,
making music together. It's that trust of like, okay, we're in this together.
yeah.
And which was like so overused this last year, right? This phrase, we're in it
Oh,
together, and we are all separate and sequestered, and
yeah,
it didn't feel like we were together.
yeah.
but but that is that feeling of trust. I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I think that is definitely that's key. That's not necessarily something that you see from the audience, but you do see shared a shared experience happening on stage.
Yeah,
It's shared and it's unified.
right.
But yeah, so let me just take a quick look at my notes for a second. So what are you working on now? Are you working on anything now for yourself? And that, I mean, your own smaller projects, not other people's works?
I think uh I am actually, and I think it was the pandemic that really pushed me into this way of thinking. And it's that, you know, the classical music world feels so insular sometimes.
Hmm,
And I feel that it needs a change.
hmm,
And I'm really looking at different ways to make it so that there's not such a barrier between the orchestra and the stage and the audience,
yeah,
and how to do that in a really long-term way, not just a quick fix, which I think we've always tried to do as an organization. I'm talking about the big classical music world organization.
hmm,
Um, there have been wonderful ways to reach out to other cultures, like Yo-Yo Ma and his Silk Road
yeah,
project, which is fantastic. And I've actually gotten to know a lot of the people in that ensemble. And so I've worked with Wu Man, who's a fantastic pipa player. I'm working with Sandeep Das, who's an amazing tabla player from India, and working with orchestras with them. you know,
Wow. Wow.
and they're always a hit with audiences, even though the sound is so different, you know. And for some reason, I really think it's not just the instrument, but it's their personality. Like I was saying earlier, you know, what they bring to the audience. And so I'm really looking at different ways how we can make this into a more, not global thing, but I don't know, include the environment in it, include, you know, social justice in it, include all the things that we all experience in our daily lives. Why does classical music have to be like this whole other world, you know? And a separate entity? When Beethoven struggled with social issues, you know, Mozart struggled with poverty. I mean, we put these people on pedestals. We don't realize that they were human. You know, Schubert, one of the most talented composers, died, you know, really, really young, 31, and he was really ill. He had lots of physical illnesses. Tchaikovsky, you know, he was a closet gay, and you know, we think of the Nutcracker, and that's all we think of, but we don't think of he had so many mental illness issues. You know, Robert Schumann, another composer, huge mental illness issues, and he, you know, tried to commit suicide, and of course, he died after he tried to commit suicide. It was so sad. I mean, all these composers that wrote incredible music that we put on, a classical music world puts on a pedestal and say, well, you should know this piece, not who they were as people. You know, I think there's a way to do this so that it can be more accessible. It can be more relatable.
So relating to classical music, certainly through understanding more about the human side of the composers, what else helps people enter?
That's a great question. I think connections, relationships, you know, and this is what I do as a music director is I really try and be accessible. You know, I am not this typical maestro. I don't look like a maestro, and I speak to the audience. I have these talkbacks after the concerts. They're called Stay Tuned. And the audience can come to the lobby, and I invite the artist, the guest artist, the soloist, and myself, and I invite questions. You know, what do you want to ask about this concert? And, you know, after a concert, you're so buzzed, you know, you're so excited, and you get to meet the artist and the conductor, and you get to ask them questions. You know, it's like you're backstage, right?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be amazing? And so I have that with my orchestra and with my community in Fresno, and it's such a huge hit. It's been sponsored now, you know, and people are looking forward to it. And you know, we even have kids asking questions. You know, imagine being a 10-year-old musician. If I were a 10-year-old musician and I got to hear, you know, like one of my people that I love to follow is Seiji Ozawa, and I got to ask him a question. You know, I mean, that's just, I think it really makes people feel connected.
Absolutely. I think that kind of presence is really generous. And I think that is something that people can feel excluded from, even if they have a ticket and a seat or whatever, they can still feel they're not part of that. And so we've got some nice comments, you guys. We've got people who are joining us. Hi, Thalia. Hi, Alan. So nice to see you here. So Thalia says, hello, happy to tune in. Great topic. Thank you so much. And Alan says, this sounds so amazing. Love Yo-Yo Ma, and guitarist Sharon is in Who Make Classical Music Related, Lean World Music by collaborating with so many cultures. Love what you are doing. Love what you're doing. That is Alan Walters from Wales joining us today.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. I've got a couple questions jotted down. I always say I don't have questions, but in thinking about talking with you, Ray, I actually wrote a few questions down.
Sure.
So Oh, I do. Here's a question. If it,
Okay.
that is along the same lines of sort of inviting people in, helping people get closer to the world of classical music. If you were to talk to somebody who knows nothing about classical music, like for example me, what works of art would you say? Please learn about these. Please listen to these and deep dive here. What would be the starting point for a deep dive in?
Wow. Oh, that's a great question. um, you know, I would say listen to any of the Beethoven symphonies.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's something visceral about his music that people can really connect to. Um, and I would, gosh, that's a great question. I've never been asked that question. I mean, I have pieces that I think are really exciting. There's a piece called The Rhyme of Taigu by Zhu Long, and it's Zhoulong.
Okay.
And it's an amazing orchestral piece. When I first heard it, I'm like, God, there's something about that piece. It's about 8 minutes long. And it's the story is about taigu is the Japanese taiko rhythm drums. You know, you see those big drums and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and then so it's this take on the rhythmic drumming, and rhythmic music has always, touched me, not just in classical music, but in all kinds of music. Because I used to love the Pretenders, and I used to
Yeah.
love, all the pop music when I was growing up, and Jimi Hendrix,
Yeah.
So I find that some of this new music, especially this Rhyme of Taigu, I think would be really interesting for people to listen to. Yeah, and that's considered classical music. And
Yeah.
you listen to it and you're really like, well, I know that sounds like an orchestra, but is that classical music? Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. So that's it. So take note. So I'm taking note.
Okay.
So very good. And so do you write your own music as well?
I do not. I do not. Yeah. And there's so many composers in the past who are conductors, pianists, and composers.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those. I just feel too intimidated by all these master composers and people who really, I don't have anything to say, And I think
that's funny.
if you're a composer, you have to have something to say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
or don't say it. Like don't rewrite another Beethoven symphony or a Schumann symphony or Tchaikovsky symphony. I feel like you have to have something that you need to put
get
forth.
out.
Yeah. And yeah.
How do you think that people who write great works arrive at that moment? How do they, where does it come from?
I think it's like writing a great song, Hannah. It's like, with your work. I mean, I don't know if you have some sort of connection to, a higher being that just lets you write this amazing song. But I think that composers have that, they have this need, this connection, and they can do that. And so that's why I love to promote new composers.
Yeah.
I love doing that because I think I look for those composers that have something to say,
Yeah.
and do it well. And so I don't feel like I need to be doing that.
That's really interesting.
I don't have time either. So
yeah. But then as the conductor, you become part of the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And so this weekend in Hawaii, we're working with a local composer named Michael Thomas Fumai. He is from Hawaii, and his music is fantastic. Look him up, Michael Thomas Fumai, Foumai. And we're doing his piece, Becoming Beethoven. And so what he did was he put in snippets of Beethoven symphonies and re-orchestrated it and redid it his own way. And it is gorgeous. His music is cinematic.
Wow.
And it tells the story of Beethoven struggling with his loss of hearing.
Oh,
and
wow.
His triumph over that. Because by Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, he was completely deaf. and to write music, to be a musician and not be able to hear, and it's phenomenal.
Wow, that sounds like go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that sounds like a phenomenal project and a phenomenal person to work with. So I'm going to say we've got 2 comments in the comment section. One is from Thalia. She says, "I heard Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata when I was about 8 years old. It really had a profound effect. The melody is one that instantly puts me in a meditative place."
Yes, it's a gorgeous sonata, piano sonata. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian Dollinger has joined us, and he
My
asks
husband.
he's asking you, what is your dream orchestra to conduct?
Oh my goodness. Okay, my dream orchestra to conduct would be the Berlin Philharmonic.
Okay, why is that?
They are an amazing, I think no, I had to step back because I'm putting them on a pedestal, and I don't want to do that. It's an orchestra that has an incredible history. First of all, many famous conductors have conducted the Berlin Philharmonic, and it's an orchestra that is like driving a Ferrari.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And you're on the Autobahn. You have no speed limit. And you could
wow.
And you could just go, and just to have that experience someday would be my dream.
That's neat. That's great. Yeah. Wow. That is a very interesting description of that orchestra. I will have to pay more attention. Plus a trip to Berlin is always a nice thing. Thalia has asked, please add the artist names you mentioned. I'm going to type them into the chat so people can look them up. You mentioned Michael Thomas. Was that it?
Foumai, yes, Michael Thomas Foumai, Foumai, and he's got some incredible music. But what's amazing is that because he's from Hawaii, he's really worked on pieces that speak to the Hawaiian culture.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to do a piece called Ke Hahiki, and it is a tribute to the Polynesian wayfinders. These explorers.
Wow.
And I think the leader, her name was Lei Kiki, and she was the leader that led all of the explorers to find Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And so this whole story is woven into this piece that we're going to do next week. And it does, the way he writes is, again, like I said, cinematic, so you hear the waves, it's like Debussy or Ravel and how they were able to put impressionistic paintings in their music. Yeah. And so he's able, and he's probably like 35 years old, and he's able to write in this language that sounds so like what I'm looking at outside here, this ocean and beauty and landscape of Hawaii. And so I love working with composers like that who, really embrace who they are and are able to say something that's different and new.
Yeah. So are we going to be able to see any of this online? Is it going to be live streamed or anything?
No, they are all in-person concerts. So you have to come to Honolulu to see them.
Oh, wow. Well, that sounds really interesting. So how long are you in Hawaii for?
Well, we just finished our second concert last night, and we're doing another concert tonight, and then another week of rehearsals. So two more weeks.
Yeah. Okay. And then it's back to Illinois?
And then I go to California, to Fresno, to work with my orchestra in a few things there. And we're going to be doing, this is so exciting, Peter and the Wolf.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, the story of Peter and the Wolf is with Peter and his grandfather and him scolding him not to go into the woods because of the big bad wolf, right? Well, I found a composer named Viet Quang. He is Vietnamese, and he wrote a piece that preludes Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. And so it's the story of the grandfather before Peter arrives. And he goes into the woods and explores them. And so it's this wonderful 10-minute work that works brilliantly with Peter and the Wolf. Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
But
that's really cool.
in a new language. So he does these experimental things with the violin, and they sound like frogs.
Wow.
And so you'll just hear all this nature in this 10-minute work by Viet Cuong.
And when was that written?
It was written in 2016.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's very cool. Very interesting. So as you move forward, you are bringing your energy and essence and interests into everything. That sounds great.
Yeah, and those will be available for streaming. You can watch them in our Fresno Phil YouTube page. That they'll be available in September. And
Okay.
we're doing this as an education concert for families.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's something that families can watch together.
Yeah. Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So are you seeing the world start to open up? I mean, it seems like you're moving into your next season.
Yes. Thankfully. But we're all embracing for whatever happens now. I think it's just not a green light. I think we're just going to have to live with so many different issues as we move forward into the future. Not just the coronavirus, but environmental issues, right?
So much has come to the head right now. It's like absolutely there's no turning back. And hopefully we can, survive it all.
I know. And so, yes, the music industry, all the arts were hit so badly last year. And I don't have to repeat that, but it's been devastating for my musicians. Luckily I've been okay, financially and my family. It's the most that I've ever spent with my husband, because my husband's also a conductor. And so he's traveling all the time. And so the last year has been really incredible to stay home and be with my family.
Absolutely.
I have a 9-year-old daughter, and just to see her, every day, every week has been a blessing, because I'm always traveling. But yes, all my engagements that were canceled last year have been rebooked for this season, thankfully. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. So moving forward. So Ray, thank you so much for waking up early and having a cup of coffee early, and making time for this conversation. This was great, as I knew it would be. But before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, of all these, you have so many talents and so much wisdom that you bring to your work, but what is your superpower?
My superpower. It's so hard to answer that question. I think that I have tenacity. I think that's my superpower, is to never give up.
Yeah.
And I think that for all the obstacles that I have and everyone has overcome this past year, I think that is something that will really help us. If everyone can just have that grit and that willingness to keep going, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lovely. That's beautiful. So one final thing, Thalia asks, where can we follow along with the latest updates and upcoming engagements? Is your website the place to keep track of things?
Yes. Okay. My website, my Facebook page, and I have an Instagram page too. So please follow me. Yeah.
And I'm going to post that in here. Here are two of them. I'm posting in the chat just so people can have this.
And please look at our Fresno Phil website and YouTube pages too, to watch the concerts for free.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day. You have a day in front of you in Hawaii. So enjoy that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody who joined us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.